Cheers, everybody. It's the Lowdown, the first one. I'm Jason Burns, and we're going to spend some time with some of the Blast Cult players. I've got a little list of guys they're going to be coming on throughout the lockdown time, whatever that's going to be. Anyway, we're going to try to get to meet some of the players, learn a little bit of music, take a little lesson, and have some fun. Have a beer. Anyway, we got George Stijepovic on today, and he's an amazing double bass player from Serbia. And he's got some great licks to show you guys. So I've been cooped up in here. I'm in the UK. I'm in our London shop. Thank God I'm locked away in my workshop so I can build here. And I'm kind of locked away. I'm on isolation anyway, really. But it really kind of hit me yesterday. I was in here working, and I'm like, wow, you can't go to the store and buy wood anymore. You can't go buy paint. And then I started thinking, like, wow, this is serious business. And I started getting nostalgic and going online and watching old shows, bands, and I was actually working on my motorcycle yesterday and had the computer, and I was just YouTube, and I watched Bad Brains 1982 at the 930 Club, and just remembering, like, wow, the 80s were so great compared to what we're dealing with right now. It was kind of sad, but also maybe it was just a good little trip I took last night, and then I just went down the YouTube wormhole and started watching all the old shows and realize even when we're free and we can go out and see stuff, it's just not the same. You have you've got the purple VIP B series wristband. You stand here. You've got the A VIP. You've got the normal dude pass, so you can't stand here. You want to buy a fajita pretzel to watch the show? It's stupid. Anyway, it made me think about how much I miss, going to a show where you don't know what's really going to happen. All hell could break loose and the place can catch on fire, whatever. And anyway, sorry about going on about that. But what we're going to do is we're going to answer some questions that you guys have for George or myself. We're going to keep track of it in here, and any comments or whatever you want to ask or find out about, we'll do. So let's bring on George. George's out in LA right now, cooped up in his place. What's up, dude?
Hey, I didn't tell me to bring the beer.
I just assumed you would have thought that was like standard issue. You sound way better than me. You got one of those Mojave mics, huh?
Oh yeah, it might be just closer. I don't know.
Yeah, my Mojave mics. I've got the same one. It's in LA. It's in the LA or the Orange shop.
Oh, cool.
County shop.
I have two right now. I think this one is M800. I use it for slap usually, but now I use it for voice for you. And I have down there 200 that I use for bass.
Is that the tube preamp?
I was never a gearhead, so I don't have a clue. It kind of looks like those
big
old tubes, but I'm not sure if it is or not.
Yeah, man. Cool. Well, I'm glad you're here, man. How are you doing over there? You okay?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I prefer to be in a shop like building my new bass, though.
What?
This is fine too.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, while I've been, sequestered here, I've built my bass, which is going to be the first UK 145. Check
Oh,
it out.
cool.
See it?
Yeah.
So
So next
cool.
time when I tour Europe, I can use that one.
Yeah, maybe, we'll
Oh,
see. I haven't built myself an instrument in so long. I have one blast bolt instrument, and it's
oh,
in Louisiana, and everybody's using it like cheap, whatever.
it's
But
not the
I
pink one that you had like when I met you, right? That's not that one,
maybe
right?
the green one,
Oh, the
dark.
green one. Oh, the pink one was a king, right?
Yeah, the pink one was a king. That one's in like a ranch in Texas somewhere. That one's
Oh,
pretty
okay.
dope. I only have that for a second, then I left it with a friend.
Oh,
Pink
cool.
diamonds in the scroll, real pink diamonds in the scroll.
I remember that one. That's when
Yeah,
we met in Memphis at Ponderosa Stone when you played with CC.
that's right, man. We met at the Gibson factory,
Yeah.
and you were playing with all the legendary old cats, and
Yeah, that was awesome. That was great experience. That was the first tour that I tried American barbecue as well. So that was
really,
so yeah.
oh man,
I remember that tour because
your
that
life.
was
'Cause
my
every time I see you, you want barbecue.
oh yeah, of course.
Yeah,
That's when it started. And blame Deke Dickerson because that was my first US tour, and it was a tour with Deke Dickerson in the Echophonics. And that particular festival I played with so many legends. It was so cool, like with Scotty Moore band, with DJ Fontana, when Sonny Burgess was singing, DJ was playing drums, Joe Clay, Eddie Bond, like all kinds of people. It was so cool.
oh, Clay, the best ever.
Oh
That
yeah.
one is so good. Yeah, man, what a good way to break into America,
Oh yeah.
huh? All
That was
over.
actually like a couple of years after I moved to the States. I moved to the States in 2004, and that festival was, I believe, it was 2006 or something. But it was a blast. It was the best.
I was sneaking around the Gibson factory because it was all kind of shut down. They just had
Oh yeah.
the venue part open in the bar, and I was like picking locks, sneaking in because that was where they made the hollow bodies. I'm like, let's see
Oh
what
yeah.
they got going on here.
It was
Creeping around.
it was awesome.
I got busted a couple times, but
I remember next day I went to Sun Studio. Like, hey, you're the one that play with all these Sun people. Like, you don't have to pay anything here. You're part of the family. I'm like, oh yeah, all right.
yeah, man.
First time I felt like, all right, I made it. It doesn't mean anything in a normal world, but it made a lot in a rockabilly world.
Man, I'm ready to record.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, man. Well, so that was the first US tours you were doing was with Deke?
Oh yeah, my first tour in US was with Deke. Yeah.
That's a good guy to go around with and learn about, especially around South and all of that. You were also researching because you've been if you don't know who Georgie is, he's a well-studied double bassist. He's played slap and rockabilly and all that, but he's studied all types of music, and he's actually a historian and goes around and he's actually tracked down where the slap double bass was invented and is writing a book, a textbook for double bass, slap bass, and slap bass notations, along with tons of lessons, right? Tell me
Yeah,
about
it's gonna be. I've been working on that one for such a long time. It's kind of like a never-ending story because I always find like new things that I want to add, and I want it to be perfect. I want it to be like one thing that can have information like from the past, like all the historical facts, but like also to talk about nowadays guys because I think it's very important to give props to the guys that are doing it now because the technique is not dead. It was never very popular, but now it's very vibrant. I would say like you can find like slap bass players all over the world, mostly in rockabilly though. But I see that like more and more people are getting interested in different music styles and then use it in different genres, which was always my thing. Whenever I played, if I played like Romani, Gypsy music, Balkan music, or even classical music, when I was studying at a conservatory in Serbia, people were one composer approached me. He's like, I like that technique that you're using. Can I write a piece for you? And I was like, yeah, that's always something what I was always into it. And I had a couple composers wrote pieces where I actually used slap, which was really cool. And I like using it in all jazz. Of course, that's kind of like a jazz technique, because it most likely started in New Orleans, and but I like using it in modern jazz as well. So it's just a technique like a bow and pizzicato that you can use in any genre you like.
Yeah, and since the '50s, since the P bass and the electric bass came out, that was the birth of rock and roll, but also kind of the death of double bass in popular music. And I've always thought of it the same, kind of like I like to see it out of context. So people playing slap bass or even just double bass on anything other than just rockabilly or psychobilly, whatever.
Back,
There's so many things that could still happen on that instrument. So if you're a bass player, I mean, there's trails that haven't been blazed on the instrument yet. There's genres that it needs to go into. I always thought it's perfect for speed metal. I mean, you can play really tight, stiff, and
especially with a galloping pattern with, like
for a speed metal band to get that licked, man, But
I mean, I think that people are experimenting with, especially with metal, all over the place. Like I would prefer it was like a more good music written for slap, and not like people often think about genres, and then I'm like, let's think about music, and then let's incorporate our instruments and do whatever you need to do, like to make the song sound better. That's the only thing that
you have a business plan for your band. It's not really, it doesn't really work for art as much as it does for a business. I agree. I think that if you did play speed metal or any kind of like really aggressive music with it, you might have to kind of ride it around those bass lines, because it gets pretty busy, the percussion, and to keep it tight and everything clean, you have to kind of ride around the double bass.
I mean, I think that like for upright bass, I mean, especially slap, it was always the thing between drums and a bass player. So then if you structure the song around those two elements, I mean, in any genre, I mean, if you listen to like old John blues or old jazz, like, I mean, those are the guys that played the groove and the bass notes and bass root notes of the chords. So, and if you have like a little rhythm that goes with drums, it's great. You have the pocket, and then when those two click together, it's magical.
Yeah, definitely, man. So when did you know you wanted to play double bass? I know you probably started on electric bass.
No, of course not. No, I started playing upright bass when I was 12 or 13.
Where'd you get it? Did you own one, or I mean?
Well, I did not own one. It was kind of funny story. I got into rockabilly when I was about 9, and I was really into early Elvis and the Stray Cats. When I was 10, I was already all pumped up and like all crazy about 50s and psychobilly and neo rockabilly. It was always the one thing for me. I never.
Yeah, I remember seeing that video of you swing dancing. I mean, how old were you? That video of you dancing around with your palm.
I think I was 11 or 12, something like that. That was funny. I mean, it was cool because it was in Serbia, and that time was still. I mean, it was still Yugoslavia, and it was like a communism. So you had like a kid with I mean, there were like a few of us in my class that were like really into rockabilly.
Was it hard to get records there?
Sorry?
Was it hard to get albums there? Music?
No, because Yugoslavia was kind of in between East and West, which now I see as a very positive thing, because I had lots of influences from mostly like from the West, from US, American music, because it was open. You could travel, you didn't need visa and anything back in the day. And then you also had all those Eastern influences. So it was Yugoslavia, and Serbia was always in the middle, but through the whole history, we never had like a 50 years of peace, like like there's no stretch in whole history that you can find. and we
But
had
the
very
80s
turbulent history
pretty
of politics. It was crazy.
peaceful there, right? In Serbia or Yugoslavia.
Back then it was super peaceful, and then I mean back then I think it was the best country in the world, you know, because you could do anything. It was very, you had, you know, good, you know, good kind of like a socialist system, like a free healthcare, free education, and all of that stuff. But then your passport was pretty strong. You could travel, and then you could have all the benefits from the Western world. So I think it was really cool. And then all the bands were traveling. You know, when I was playing with Lemmy told me that he played in Yugoslavia like in 65 or something like that, like with his first band, Rockin' V Cars. That was a
Yeah.
cool story. He was telling me how he had a dinner with the president of Yugoslavia, Tito, at that time. And that was back then in the 60s. That
He
was
was
like
the guy
that
holding the
was
whole
behind
thing
the
together. Like
Iron
that,
Curtain.
Tito, that was the guy that kind of held that whole section of the world together. It seemed like just from
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
and so Lemmy went to dinner with him.
Lemmy was a part of the group. I think, I mean, that was like a long time ago when he told me that story, but I believe the story goes that since he was the first in the first band or one of the first bands that was traveling behind the Iron Curtain from the West, so the president wanted to meet everyone who wanted to do that, who was allowed to do that. So that's the reason why he went to the basically like all the presidents from Yugoslavia at that time, because like many republics and all that.
Right.
So it's crazy. But he told me that he didn't talk to him either at all or much, but they shook hands, which I thought was really cool. Like, come on, man.
Cool. And hey, well, like since we're on that, when he died, not Lemmy, Tito, that's when it fell apart over there, and then you were pretty much dodging bullets and bombs and
Yeah, no, I mean, like about 10 years later, but that was the beginning
yeah,
of the
like what 91.
90s. Yeah, about like early 90s. Everything pretty much went to shit. So, and it's still pretty crappy politically.
Yeah, yeah. So how did you manage to get out of there after that? I mean,
Well, at that time, I mean, in the 90s, there were sanctions, so you couldn't go, you couldn't leave really. And
right.
during bombing, you couldn't leave either, of course. But I managed a few. I mean, you could leave, but it was kind of like a pain in the butt. You needed visas and all of that. I actually had luck because I was um, always playing music, and I was playing in symphony orchestras. They were like touring, and then I was playing in not much in bands, but I was going to different workshops, like especially jazz and classical workshops in Germany. I remember one in Michalstein that when I had the chance to study with some of the best classical double bass players at that time, and um, so I, I had luck that I was able to do that, and it was always some kind of scholarship that you would get, and because it was extremely, I mean, kind of like impossibly expensive to leave because of the inflation at that
Thank
time.
God you had that. You were doing classical and jazz too, because they don't give psychobilly passes
I
to.
mean, for me, it was I was just I was not doing it because of that. I was doing it because I wanted to learn to play bass better, and then um, basically you just had to be good in order to pass the entrance exam, and then if you get accepted, you get accepted to the conservatory, and that's how I did it. So that was very helpful for me. I don't think the school is for everyone, but um, for me it was very helpful, extremely helpful. I think that I would be stuck in you know 145 12-bar blues without classical
Yeah, of
classical.
course, man. And especially with bass, man, there's a point where you're like, well, now what's next? I got that part. I can see that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was very helpful. Like there are like lots of, especially jazz guys back in the day, They didn't have education, but they were like amazing, you know. And then it's like I don't want to judge anyone. Everyone has its own path. But for me, the structured education was very helpful. I'm not very
Yeah.
structured person, so I think
You're a structured person. You are. Every time I see you, you're like, okay, I'll be there at 9:11. And then you call like, hey, I'm running late. I'll be there at 9:12. Like, I'm not even there yet, dude. I don't even know when I'm getting there. You're pretty structured, except for tonight, and you showed up like 1 minute before we went live, and down. So I couldn't even understand that. I'm like, what's he doing? Where is he?
No, I'm trying to be structured. I'm trying to be, definitely, but it's, I mean, for a musician, I think I am, but you know, for
Yeah, you are. Yeah. You're up early. You're doing stuff. You're drinking.
Depends,
coffee.
you know, it really depends. Depends on the day. If I'm on tour, or if I'm on tour, then I'm really awake early. Especially if we're in Europe, we're on a tour bus, and then, you know, with Tiger Army, we arrive usually to New City around 5 or 6. You know, I wake up, you know, a couple hours later, and then I go.
Uh, researching bass history.
I mean, depends. If I'm in Europe, then I do not. I mean, I did. I don't know. I travel like all over the place, like so many times, so it's hard like to see. I try to visit the same things that I really like, but you know, if I'm in Europe, you know, I would go usually to, you know, some museums and, you know, check out. Europe has like lots of great history. If I'm in South America, my favorite thing is to go to farmers market, Central Mercado in the morning, and then, you know, try all the fruits that I never tried before. So that's you know, in different continents, I like doing different things.
I hear you. I hear you, man. Well, um, let's talk about like the first we met at that Ponderosa Stomp, but then we started kind of working together. We had ideas about you needed a bass and you wanted to, you know, we started kind of working on your bass idea. I think it was the end part of King double bass, and then you were one of the first guys. You know, with Miles and Jimbo that I was working with, and kind of, you know, built bases for to start Blaskell off with. And I remember you were there because you were in LA and our Orange County shop were so close. You know, you were there a lot and had a lot of input on what we're doing and kind of direction I was going with your instrument and everything. And I know I was trying to, you know, kind of reinvent what I was doing from King double bass to Blaskell. And all four of you guys, even Dave Rowe and definitely Miles, you know, Miles was in LA too, was a big part of that as well. But one of the first double basses I built at Blaskell was yours, and you did a video of it, you know, the whole build and everything. Huh?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that was good times. You know, I remember that. It's like 2010 and 2011. I think that you built it in 2000. That's this bass, and you built it in 2011.
It's always good times when you're completely free and creating something new, and it's always seems like those are the best times in life, really. But
oh yeah, absolutely.
it was a good time. The first part of that company, coming off a bad part of the last company, everything. It was a good, fresh couple of years of like designing and just coming up with new pickup systems, how everything was going to work there at Blaskell.
It was a cool little crew, you know. Besides us, you know, players, you know, you had like a good people that surrounded you. So it was very positive. I loved spending time at the Blaskell, at the old shop and the new shop.
Yeah, man. We have great people. We still, you know, still working with most of the same people, Martin and even Derek O'Brien from back at the King days, early King days came, and now he's kind of running the Orange County shop, you know. And here I've just kind of started the one in the UK, and I'm gathering a group of misfits over here as well. But yeah, man. So on your bass, we really started like kind of experimenting on the pickups because that was a big part of how I started the whole deal anyway. Even King was the double bass pickup being heard on big stages with, 810, multiple 810 cabinets, 1,000-watt amps and that kind of thing. And that's still even evolving today, but we worked a lot on your pickup in particular because you wanted every sound that we'd ever done put into one thing.
Yeah, that was always my thing, like, and my approach. And I think when I was a kid, when I started playing bass and when I was analyzing what other rockabilly people were doing, and back in the day it was kind of impossible to get information from the US, but I would look at the album covers and see the lead rocker had P magnetic pickups, or like some other psychobilly guys had shadow pickup or this or that, and then like traditional rockabilly guys uh, usually had the Underwood pickup. So I always wanted to have something that I could
That worked.
that I could use for any situation that I'm at, so that I don't want, if I'm playing a jazz gig, that I want to have like a nice warm pizzicato sound, and I can use them like nicely with the bow. But if I play arena show, that I don't have a problem with the feedback. And then for when you play that pizzicato sound and then you want to slap comes out fine if it's a small club, like up to, I don't know, 100 people or something. But if you're playing for several thousands of people, then slap is gone. Then I always wanted to have an option to have slap being heard, you know everywhere. If I'm playing, as I said, the arena gig, I want
Easy
slap
for
to be
sound
dominant,
engineers as
but the
well.
tone as well.
Because sound engineers, especially like 10, 15 years ago, when you brought an upright bass on the stage, you're just like, oh man, what are we going to do with this thing? It's just going to feed back the whole time to really work and figure it out. And they didn't know. I think nowadays they're a little bit more hip to the how to get a tone without making it suck the whole time. But I
might be, but I'm telling you, like whenever I tour, sound engineers like at venues, like always tell me, hey, I love the sound from your bass. It's so easy, no feedback, so it's great. And I use Orange 810s, so it's not super easy to make the sound be nice and warm and not super cliquey, but you did hear the bass. But with this pickup and the Orange system that I use, I think it sounds pretty damn good.
Yeah, so we've developed a pickup for George A. It's called the George A Channel Blaster, and it's basically our Channel Blaster 2, which is a piezo bridge pickup and a slap pickup that are blended. And then with George A's, we added the magnetics that are built into his fingerboard, so he can pan with one knob. It goes all the way to the left is the bridge piezo, all the way to the right is the magnetics on his fingerboard. So he can get any blend of those two pickups that he wants, and also control the slap pickup as well. And it's all built into his tailpiece. So he's got basically three pickups that are all blended into one output, and you just plug in a guitar.
Which basically that combination gives like any kind of tone pretty much, because you can have like more slap for psychobilly, and more tone, less slap or no slap for a jazz gig, or even if I play a jazz gig or like a more acoustic gig, I add a little bit of that magnetic, but a tiny bit. It's mostly 95% acoustic, but I add that little bit of that magnetic, and then just like if I want to have a slide that it's not that it's like then you can have that. So it's a cool system. I don't tell all the secrets, so it's out publicly. So, but I'm really happy. It's the best pickup I ever played, and I hope I don't have to play anything else ever again.
Well, hopefully you'll be able to play some gigs pretty soon, man. Um,
Yeah, I'm using this downtown like to finish some of my recordings. I plan to put out some of my original music out there, and then um, Tiger Army has lots of shows scheduled right after we're done with this. Whenever that happens, we're supposed to headline a psychobilly meeting in Spain in July, and Nashville Boogie in October. So those shows could be cool, should be cool, and um, then we have lots of touring US and Canada, and I plan to put out my original music, which people can find out. I'm Bull Fiddle Cat everywhere: Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, uh, and so people can find me. And I'm
yeah,
really excited
you
about.
post a lot of stuff, and you're always posting some pretty cool bass lines. I see them every week. You got some crazy ass cool rhythm patterns, man. That's one thing you've really dove into on your quest to kind of move it out of 145 stuff. Where I love the rhythm patterns, and I mean, just being from America, and then always listening to the old rhythm and blues stuff and all of that. I kind of have tunnel vision on that kind of thing. But when I watch you play, I do kind of get some of that. There's that Eastern kind of, like, I don't even know how to explain, but you get those rhythms. I think when you're blending some of that in with some of the old school US sounding stuff, it's cool, man. You got your own thing going for sure.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I always thought that it was a goal for any musician to find his own voice, and I grew up with rockabilly and old rhythm and blues and old jazz. That was the things that really struck me when I was a kid. When for the first time when I saw Elvis Presley's videos and Stray Cats and all of that stuff. And then I got deeper into like original stuff, and then I really got into old jazz, like Louis Armstrong and all that stuff, like, and those bass players back in the day, like Bill Johnson and Pops Foster and
Yeah.
Steve Brown and all those cats. And um, but at the same time, I was kind of listening when I was a kid. I was listening more to than punk and metal, but I was always a rockabilly guy.
What about
And
Serbian music? Did you ever? I mean, what was that jam like, or Yugoslavian music, or whatever it was, like your local guys and legends? What were you pulling anything from that?
oh yeah, there was one band in particular called Vera Kvark, and they had the coolest look ever. They were kind of like a Stray Cats type of band with the bass player singing, but that's what really that was a big push when I was 11 or something. Seeing
Yeah,
that
I'm
guy
saying,
Jacob became a
like
friend of mine, and then I
so,
saw him in
like
some videos and saw him. So he was playing on the street, and he had like a giant, blonde pompadour, and it was cool, like so. That was
Pompadours,
the sport I
Jordan.
was listening
I'm
to.
talking about. Like, what about Yugoslavian bands or any? That's kind of my question. Like, did you pull from any players that weren't rockabilly dudes from
Oh,
there?
absolutely, but a little bit later, so not when I was 10, 11, 12, 13. When I was 13, I got a little bit more into Clash and stuff like that, and then a little bit into uh stuff like Cult and Motorhead.
I
uh
get it,
and
but like, I'm just saying, dude.
no,
Like,
no, I'm no, I'm,
what
I'm getting into there.
what else?
Like you're asking me about traditional or like more
Yeah.
Balkan music, gypsy music. I'm getting into that. So,
All right. Give
and,
us some
but
names.
right up,
Look up
right
some
up.
look up some licks and some artists from there.
I y- well, not licks, but influences. Yes, not licks that much because nobody was playing slap in that style of music. until I heard Star of the Haiduks, but that was later. I already played traditional Balkan music and Romani music before I heard Star of
Yeah.
the Haiduks. And so then when I was about 15 or 16, I got more into classical and jazz. And around that time, I got more into Balkan music, into traditional world music, traditional Balkan music, traditional Serbian music. And then I was not really following any particular artists, but I started playing in a band called Balkan Music Club. They were already kind of established. And then um, I was the youngest in the band, but they were led by a professor from the music conservatory who was really into traditional music, and that was kind of like my first way of understanding that type of stuff, like all those irregular rhythms, odd time signatures, like 7/8, 9/8, 11/8, and that stuff really influenced me. It blew me away. And at the same time, actually, I started working with a professor, Vojin Draškoci, who's one of the first, I would say, first free jazz guys and definitely first world music guys that were incorporating Balkan music into jazz. Back, he did that in '70s, and then whoever's into this kind of stuff should check out records called the Balkan Impressions. Those are from early '80s. Drums. And it's great stuff. It's great music, and it really kind of opened my mind.
Don't you think that music kind of lends itself to slap on a double bass, though?
Oh, absolutely. There are actually a couple guys that I reached out to that are using it, but they're not aware of like all the crazy patterns, so they're not very developed. Their slap technique is not very developed, but their regular bass technique is extremely developed, and their musicality is extremely developed. So they're able to incorporate that kind of slap, but like usually just like single, double slap, like basic stuff, but into new music genres, like more open or whatever, like free and more improvised or contemporary classical and all of that stuff.
I mean, I would have bet all my money that slap bass kind of came from that old gypsy style, being in the, outside with acoustic instruments. I swear, I mean, it just sounds like it should but bluegrass sounds like it should have slap in it, and true bluegrass doesn't.
Well, original bluegrass does. First bluegrass recordings that were recording in some hotel in Kentucky. I remember. I think so. They were all slap. That later on, they started, Bill Monroe like cutting like fingerboards and then forbidding bass players.
Really?
Some of my favorite bluegrass recordings are actually with slap. And whoever is into bluegrass or who wants to research, bluegrass slap should check out Flat and Scruggs live at Carnegie Hall. I believe it's 1961. I'm not positive about a year, but it was with cousin Jake Tulloch on bass. He was excellent slapper, extremely influential to bluegrass guys.
Drugs, dude, you can't mess with them. They were pretty amazing.
Oh yeah,
some Beverly Hillbillies. Hey man, so I want you to play a little bit of bass for us,
sure.
And maybe give us like I don't want you to go crazy because I want people to actually kind of be able to pick this up. Just the average slap player, maybe the average rockabilly, psychobilly guy. So don't go into some crazy time signature, but give us some time signature thing that's a little bit different that everybody that's listening to play slap bass can rip off from you.
So no 11/8.
What's that? No 11/8. Can we get that calculator out, dude?
Let me think. Well, you said that you like the intro. Oops. The intro that I have like for my Atomic Sunset CD, the bass intros. That one is in.
By the way, this is a Serbian rockabilly, psycho, neo-billy, whatever it's called. Band that was amazing. I love Atomic Sunset. I love that.
Thanks, man.
So good. Let's hear.
This new album that I'm gonna put out first, it's kind of the extension of that band. It's gonna be under my name, but it's that style. That style. So all of those kind of like a heavier influences that I had, but definitely rock and roll. So I incorporate there, but all original music, lots of slapping, lots of good musicians, best. But all
Yeah.
right, so here's the riff that you told me that you would like to hear. It's from the first Atomic Sunset and the only Atomic Sunset album so far. And here it is. That's that riff. And you wanted me to explain it a little bit, right? So I call this one double rumba because it's structured instead of like regular rumba, which is 3-3-2. This one is structured 3-3-3-3-2-2, and we have goes like this. And the melodically, it's just triton, devil's interval. Hard to play it slow. And I add that little roll or flam. That's it.
I dig that the drag. Is that like a drag triplet or what do you call it? A flam?
Not a triplet, but some people call it drag a triplet. Some people call it drag. I recently found an article on slap notation by my friend Adam, who called it flam, and I like that. And then I used to call it roll because it's definitely like a the drum pattern. But sometimes you drag it or sometimes you don't. Because drag basically means that you're dragging like this, and you can play the same pattern without that. So like, I think that Kevin Smith was the one that really made this pattern popular with his legs.
Yeah, so definitely. High Noon. I heard that in High Noon a lot.
Like, but it could be usable and you could play it any way you want it. Really, I use either just fingers if I want a little bit more precise sound, or I use full hand like tututum tikadam. Sometimes I incorporate thumb, especially if I play on a G string, and then because there's nothing to here, you have like you can produce more sound if you're doing this, but on G string now. So then I kind of cheat a little bit and then do that with the thumb on top here, and then grab the string down there so it can kind of create the same amount of noise. But yeah, that's the pattern that I use a lot.
In a song too is important, especially when you have a drummer, because a lot of that can get lost. That's why Kevin did it so successfully in High Noon, because he was the drummer, he was the bass player.
There was no drums in High Noon, yeah.
And you could really hear those things, and it would drive me crazy. Like, how the hell is he doing that, man? For years, I was like, what? Then him and actually Mark Rubin is the one who told me before I met you. You remember Kevin Smith and Mark Rubin did the video, how to slap bass or whatever. And Mark Rubin's the one who told me, he's like, man, there's this dude from Serbia. He's insane. He's going off on some slap bass. That was the first time I heard about you. But
cool.
On the side.
Thanks, Mark.
Kevin was the one who was doing that, and I heard it all the time. And it was his secret, man. He wouldn't, you couldn't really see what he was doing on. It was cool though. I loved High Noon. Badass band.
Oh yeah, me too. That's one of my favorite rockabilly bands, especially from the 90s.
Yeah, they were super authentic. And
Yeah, I mean, not just that. I mean, they had, as I said earlier, for me, it's always about the songs. They had good songs. They were good musicians, good songs. It's all, all you need. I mean, all you need is really good songs. Musicianship
yeah,
comes next. Second.
you're right. You're right. Just talk to the Ramones. Hey man, I want to hear just for myself, like what's a good. I want to hear one of those Rummy gypsy bass lines, like basic,
Hmm.
like
All right, so let me play. This is one of my favorite. I'm not sure if I remember it correctly, but I'll try. It's a solo from Tarev de Hedux that I mentioned. It's a solo from the song Turceska, and I believe it's from their album Magical Brigands or something like that. And it's actually the same pattern, 3-3-3-3-2-2, which is great basis for learning odd time signatures that I can play later.
You say 3-3-3-2?
4 times 3, 2 times 2. 3 3
Oh
3 3
wow.
2
Okay.
2. So
All right.
I mean, you have that in American music too. Just play it a little bit differently, and let me see. I'm not sure if I remember it correctly. I think it goes. I'll play something either similar or the same, but it's gonna be close. That was, I mean, it's short, but I think it's cute. Just E dominant 7 chord up and down.
But if I want to learn that, what's the start of that thing, man? Just give it to me. Can you do that, bro?
So I mean, it's the same basis like that Atomic Sunset intro that I played. So
Yeah, man. I get it now. That makes
it's
a little
cool.
more sense.
It's cool, and it's about a little bit about a speed, but it's also interesting when you hear all those violins and everything. I played it like I'm not 100% sure about the notes. I forgot, but so I played it to a little bit differently. But
Good enough, dude. That's a really cool line. So what I'm gonna do after this, we're gonna edit those little parts and have them available for people to go back and kind of brush up on, so they can just play it, and learn some of that stuff. That's cool, man. Thanks. Hey, Fernando Slap, my homie over in Argentina, he wants to know.
Hi, Fernando.
He wants to know a good thumb technique exercise.
Oh man. Well, the exercise that I always recommend to my students is like to play open strings, up and down. We don't have too much time, so I don't want to get like too much into detail. But as far as exercising go, like the thumb, it's kind of tricky because you cannot really play it slow. But people can see it kind of. So I use this part of my thumb for slaps, and it especially works well for those roll slaps, flam, drag, whatever you want to call it. But I think that for this one, probably be playing chromatic scale would be the best. So let me see. I never thought about this, so I'm kind of like faking it on the spot. very useful if you play on a G string, because then you're doing it here. So then basically you create more noise. So let's try D chromatic scale. Hope
Yeah,
that answers your question, Fernando.
there you go, Fernando. I've seen Fernando's. I ain't got no problem doing that either. I've seen him rip up some of those thumb technique slaps like you just did. But that is good. Just roll chromatic, man. Um, I have a bunch of questions we're gonna get to, but one thing I realized I didn't mention is before we get into these questions is who George's played with, and I should have said that right in the beginning, but you know, I'm just started being a TV host today, so I'm not really good at it. I wanted to just say, I mean, he's played with a really cool variety of bands, and I've seen most of them live. Uh, I mean, we'll go, you know, your earlier bands in Serbia and everything. Like I said, you played with Atomic Sunset, which you could look up online and see those. You have a couple of videos online of that. They're pretty cool. Check that out. You played with Deke Dickerson, of course. That was your first U.S. experience and tour. Cool dude, great historian of all things
Absolutely.
vintage and roots. And you played with Headcat. Well, that was the next band after that. You played with Headcat, which is Slim Jim Phantom, Danny B. Harvey, and Lemmy Kilmister.
Yeah, that was started playing with them in 2007, I think. We headlined Green Bay Festival. That was really cool. Was the best. Like going, I remember going with Lemmy to check out Little Richard, because Little Richard was his favorite guy, really. And then we went together, to see him. That was really cool. He
Yeah,
headlined a
he was
different night than us, I think. It was like
he
three
was like
nights,
the
and
most
he
loved.
headliner every night, if I remember correctly.
Nobody has anything bad to say about Lemmy, man. He's a
Oh
cool dude.
yeah, he was the best.
Um, one of my favorite bands you were in was Fish Tank Ensemble, because everyone in the band was a lot like you, kind of virtuosos. None of you guys stepped on each other's feet when you played live, but it was like just the whole time I'd watch you guys play, my mouth would be open like, uh, dude, look at the fiddle player. Look at Earth playing saw. Look
Definitely
at
one of the most creative bands that I played with in the States. I loved playing with Fish Tank. It was great people, great friends. We're still in touch. We don't play together anymore, but our music is again available
yeah,
wherever I play.
Fish Tank Ensemble and watch some of their live stuff. It's pretty mind blowing. And then it's the bass. You put that bass in there perfect, man. There was all of those crazy.
Well, cool, because there was no drums, so I had the
Yeah,
freedom
yeah.
to do whatever I wanted, and then we played all those odd time signatures. But our goal was always to make them groovy and make them danceable, not fusiony and
Yeah, it wasn't just a music
organ.
jack off fest, man. It was groove. It was grooving the whole thing, man. You were shaking and moving. And people loved that band, man. It was a great band. And then you joined. Then you played with Drake Bell, who was a TV.
Joined Drake, I think, in 2013. That was cool because Drake called me, or his guitar player Andy. Forgot who was the first one, but some called me, and I was in Serbia at that time for a couple months, and they were like, "Hey, are you available to come um, to are you available to do this gig in Hollywood on particular date in December?" I was like, I am available, but I don't. I'm in Europe, and he's, "Oh no, I want you to play this gig, so I'll just fly you in, no problem. You're available?" Yeah, cool. Here's the plane ticket. We're like, all right. So, and then Then I played that gig, and we were actually guests of Brian Setzer's show at Dolby Theater. So that was really cool.
I went to that gig, didn't I?
Yeah, you were there. You were
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
You brought me the amp because I kind of, it was a mess because I
Left
was
your
just
terror base head or something, right? Yeah,
so.
yeah. We had fun that night, man. That was
It
a
was
good.
fun. It was great. It
That
was
was
so
there.
cool. Brian was great, and as always, and then Drake and me became good friends, and then we played a lot. We toured, all over the U.S. Went to Mexico several times. But that was great. Going with Drake to Mexico is
Yeah,
mind
that
blowing
started your
experience.
whole. Well, you said you went to Mexico City and all that, or you did a tour of Mexico with Fish Tank, but to get to
Yes, but
Mexico,
not Mexico City. My first Mexican tour was with Fish Tank. That
yeah.
was
But you
Tamaulipas.
were doing
Tamaulipas
coliseums and
City.
stuff with Drake, I'm sure, because he's.
And then with Drake, and then I started going regularly. Fish
Is that
Tank,
that's how you
Drake,
met
and
the
Tiger
Molotov
Army,
guy,
Molotov.
right?
What do you
The,
say?
that's how you met Molotov? Was it when you were playing there, or did they?
Um, I'm not 100% sure. Actually, they sent me a message and they said like, "Hey, would you like to come next week and join us, like to be a guest at our show?" And I'm like, this is interesting. They sent me a
Molotov
message
was
on
a
like
huge
social media
band
or
from
something,
Mexico that kind of.
and I think that my manager like saw it like first, and then was like, "Yeah, do you want to do this? And what is this?" I'm like, so. But anyway, I was not sure like what's going on. But then I asked some of my Mexican friends, and asked them about
They're
about
like,
it.
hell
They're
yeah,
like,
dude,
"Yeah, you should do this gig. This is awesome." And I
yeah.
asked them like, any other guests, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's going to be Ana Tijoux from Chile. She did music for Breaking Bad, by the way, and then she just played Bernie Sanders' L.A. convention, and she's great. She's excellent Chilean hip hop artist, and it's going to be Money Mark from the Beastie Boys, and then we would like you three to be our guests." I'm like, "Sure, I'll do it." And the show is MTV Unplugged. It's going to be aired all over Latin world. So I'm like, okay, awesome, cool. And we filmed that show, and it was released as an album and a DVD, and it was nominated for the Grammy. So that was cool.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Cool,
How
man.
about you?
Well, hey, we got a ton of questions, dude. So we have plenty of questions here. No more questions. Thanks everyone for asking. But let's. I want to first, but let me get through this list of bands that you played with. The next band from Fish Tank and Drake was Drake, and then it was Tiger Army, which a great psychobilly band from they were originally from San Francisco or Bay Area or something, right up Northern California.
Yep.
One of kind of the first of the '90s psychobilly bands that we had in the U.S. They're still crushing it, and that's who you're currently touring with now.
Yeah, that's definitely my main gig.
Yeah, yeah, I love those dudes. Nick, he's a cool mofo, and I just I saw you guys here in London last show you guys played in when you were over here.
That was
The
actually
cool
one
thing
of
is
the first
how
shows.
many
Like after
still
London, we played.
still bring young kids to the shows, man. It's awesome, you know.
Yeah, that was the end of our European run.
Oh, that was the last night, huh?
It was the last night. I flew back home to LA the next day, and then a week later, I played with Tiger Army in Mexico, and then I think that was our last Tiger Army show. We are supposed to be on tour right now, but yeah,
Man.
didn't happen
Now,
yet.
and now is the time when everybody's going out. I mean, musicians, I feel bad right now. I mean, I think one of the hardest hit professions has got to be
Oh
music.
yeah, absolutely.
Musicians, venues, bars, clubs, all
It's
that.
hard, but I think we can also all use this, time, to think about things, like how we as people, like,
crush the planet. Like seems
Yeah.
like we're kind of screwing up and
Video.
everybody else. Animal world and nature is it's glowing.
You'll be good. All right, dude. We're gonna answer questions, George. Here we go, man. The first one is from Nelson from Puerto Rico. Hola, Nelson. What is George's setup on his upright and strings he uses for his slap sound? So tell him about your
I always use
and strings.
I always use the same strings, and those are made by Thomastic Infield from Vienna. I either use their regular Spyrocore Orchestra, or I use their Spyrocore Solo, or most often I use the prototype that they're making right now. They're making that just for me, but we're talking about releasing that as a signature set or a slap set or something. We'll see. And it was originally made for people allergic to nickel, and they have like slightly less metallic sound, so which works well for the slap. So steel strings sometimes have that annoying uh, steel sound, but with these you don't have it. But they're still steel strings. These are regular solo strings. So just regular Spyrocore domestic solo tuning. And as far as the pickup, I use Blaskout Georgia pickup that hopefully you'll be able to buy soon. That that's a question for Jason, but we're talking about it as well. And then that's it. Blaskout bass always, and orange amps. I use um, Stroke 500, and I used to use Terror bass, and then I switched to Stroke, and I use 810s orange as well. That's it.
Yeah, man. I like how you say your name. Could you say Georgia again? Because I can't say it correctly. Say it.
That's it perfectly. You still have to work on my last name a little bit, but your first name
Stijepovic.
Stijepovic.
Stijepovic. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Whenever you say it, you have to feel the burden of the past.
Hey, man. All right. So I got a question from Guillermo from Spain. There's a couple of questions from him. He said, "What is the first documentary you have of slapping technique?" That's a great question. Where was the first slap done on an upright bass that you've tracked down? I love this.
Documented. Well, it's well, that's a little tricky. First document that I found about slap is from one paper that I found at a library in New Orleans when I was researching slap, and there was a first description. I believe it was December 1915 when Kid Ory played with Bill Johnson in New York, and that's when the paper was describing the technique, and something like bass player was slapping and this and this. So that's most likely the first document that talks about a technique. And listening to the interviews from those New Orleans bass players, which are available. Whoever goes to New Orleans can go to Tulane University, and listen to those interviews from those bass players. And if you have time, I did not have time, but I spent like I don't know 100 hours like listening to those interviews, because they're all like 3-4 hours long, and those guys talk about their families, their kids, and then like at one point in an interview they talk about bass and slap, and that's the moment that you're waiting for. And so most likely the first guy that actually did it was Bill Johnson. um, some other guys say that they did it before him, like Steve Brown or a couple other cats from that period, but I would say Bill Johnson, most likely, but both Bill Johnson and Steve Brown
Dude,
are really important for that, for the origins of the style.
you
Steve
told
Brown
me
was one
you
of
told me Shreveport, Louisiana, Georgie.
that's a Bill Johnson. Yeah, the legend says that Bill
I'm,
Johnson broke
I'm
his
from
toe.
Minden, Louisiana, and that was the day before he went to New York and played. What why did you tell me Shreveport? It was Bossier City, actually, right?
Well, that's a legend about Shreveport, and then like several people say that, and you can find that in jazz history books. But like if we're talking about facts and historical information as far as um, written documents back in the day, the first written document that I found was from 1915, Kid Ory with Bill Johnson, New Orleans. But Bill Johnson himself was saying the story that he got an idea for the style because I mean to start playing with fingers it because um, he broke a bow in Shreveport, Louisiana. So that's how he got into playing with fingers and playing slap. So it, it's really hard to say like where the style started, but it's whoever had a bass back in the day, I'm sure that at one point tried like that's already slap. So
Yeah, it makes sense. I prefer to believe it was Shreveport, though.
yeah, I mean it's a cool story. I mean it's pretty much as close to close to the truth that we we can get. I mean, I'm not sure if there's any other information. The From the classical world, there's a that I found another information from Bartok, a Hungarian composer who used. He was very influenced by traditional music from the Balkans, especially Romani music, Gypsy music, and then he used that particular technique. Uh, and it's in classical world it's called snap or Bartok pizzicato, and it's he said that he saw that on he saw that in bands in one particular region, I think northwest of Romania, and that they were using that technique, but he used it on he never used it on bass. He used it, and first time that he used it, I believe it was fourth string quartet that he wrote. And but that's I think he started writing that around 1925, 1926. So it's later than this description that I mentioned. But he in one of his autobiographies he wrote that he saw bands using that technique, but not on bass, um, at the end of the 19th century. So what's that could be one origin. But when I was talking to Romanian players, they said they didn't use bass, especially not slap bass, until the 70s. And that's in Romania, where slap is very developed style, and it was actually forbidden during Ceausescu's time. So that's
By
another story.
law or by music law? No?
Sorry, what do you say?
But it was prohibited by law. Is that what you
Yeah,
said?
yeah, because it was considered gypsy style of playing,
Oh,
so they were like not
wow.
allowed to do it.
Oh, that's
So
crazy,
that's
man.
the reason why everybody was playing it, weddings and parties, private parties, but nobody was, not many recordings exist because it was forbidden.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, man. So there was another question. I think we kind of answered that. It was like, have you ever used magnetics? Could you put your bass, the mags up to the camera? Like just hold it
Right.
up. So he's got magnetics on the end of his fingerboard. There's
Sure.
four. There's
See?
volume left. He's
Just wait a few more months. Guillermo, or that was Guillermo's question.
Yeah.
Just wait a few more months, Guillermo, and you'll be able to see it in detail when we release official video of Georgia pickup. But yes, I use magnetic.
There's another
I
pickup.
never use
Hey.
only magnetic.
This one's from Paul Holmes. He said, I'm playing double bass in a rock and roll rockabilly band, struggling to get the volume sometimes with some pickups. Magnetic pickups look like a good idea, or would a mix be better?
Well,
I think
can
it's
answer that as
what
well.
strings do you play
Yes, but it's
first?
also about, you know, the strings, and it's also about the technique. And you know, I never, my focus from the beginning was always like to develop my playing and um in music, and less about if I'm gonna be using this or that pickup. Um, but yes, I mean, I would say mix. If I was using only one pickup, I would definitely use piezo. But if I'm able to use what I'm able to use, which is my pickup, my Georgia Blaskout pickup, um, that's the way to go. I really literally played arenas, you know, like for 10,000 people. I played outside, you know, for 50,000 people, and I played jazz gigs, you know, for 50 people, and it's and never had any problem.
To go, do I play? I play gut string, so I don't have that magnetic choice. But I've never had a since I've developed the Channel Blaster 2. The piezo just sounds like a double bass, man. And if you want it to sound woody and natural, that's it. But if you're playing more hard rock kind of stuff, and steel strings, magnetics sound good.
Yeah, like I mean, steel strings definitely give like more options frequency wise. I do like the sound of guts as well for certain styles, certain situations, but with guts you cannot get what you can get with steels, and you can easier get that warm bass sound of the guts with steels than opposite. So, or at least get close to it.
Yeah, so our homie Guillermo from Spain asked also, do you have to use metal strings for magnetics? Yes, you
Yes.
have to have metal strings. You can't use the guts for magnetics. So that determines a lot right there. If you go, I don't want to change strings, and you automatically know what you kind of need to use, either a piezo on your bridge, or with the piezo, you can use any string you want. But with the magnetic, you have to have steels. We have, Nelson Vasquez asks, do you play Latin bass such as salsa?
Not that much. I do it, and actually, it's recently I started playing with Bernie Dressel from Brian Setzer Orchestra. Excellent drummer. He invited me to do some big band shows with him, and there's a fair amount of Latin music, and we're supposed to start playing this month. Obviously, it's not happening, but we will as soon as possible. Just go to my YouTube and Instagram, Facebook. As I said, I'm Bull Fiddle Cat everywhere, and then people, you can find information about it. And which just reminded me, I also in San Francisco. But when I was living in San Francisco, I had a Brazilian band. We played Brazilian music. That was cool.
All right, man. Look, we have one last question. I want to just take you out playing something, man, because Fernando was like, hey, man, how to use the thumb of the left hand when you play the bottom of the fingerboard. So I want you to just take us out with some of that technique, the dusty part of your fingerboard, those high notes.
What did he say? Like, so left hand, like this?
Yeah, that kind of technique. Just an exercise that that the people can work on when they do that? When they play the high notes.
I mean, for that stuff, I would always recommend studying classical bass. And there are like several books that I used in the past when I was studying, and now when I teach. One of them is Montag Lajos, Hungarian composer. The other one is Streicher, German player and a teacher. So those are all really good for developing thumb. But the thumb is a little tricky because it's not just about that. You first have to know how to get there, because how do you get here to here? There's a you have to slide, like with everything with the bass, you have to kind of like, this is the technique that you want to use in order to get here. But once you're here, I mean, what you can do the scales, basically whatever you're doing here, you're doing here. And then you practice the scales. And then, I mean, first you have to develop calluses. So, which means that you have to do finger exercise, which is usually, thumb, and then thumb, 1, 2, 3, and then do the combination, and then, like different position. Then like the one that you would use for C major scale. Stuff like that. But it's more like, I mean, you have to spend lots of time. And then I recommend that everyone should do it, but the classical is way to go. No other school has better development of the technique than classical music. So that answers that. It's hard to slap though, like when you do this. I do it sometimes, but it's a little bit tricky.
Right on, dude. Well, hey, George, we're done, man. Thank you so much for hanging out, and
inviting me. And
we're gonna put little snippets of your licks on here so that people can rip you off and learn your jams.
Sure.
And we're gonna come back. I don't know if it's gonna be a week. It might even be sooner, since we're all locked down, and I have so many people that want to come on here and talk. We might do it a little more frequently. But thanks for this, and we'll see you soon. Go to blastcult.com, blastcult.co.uk, and check out all the instruments we build and the pickup systems and strings and all that stuff. Later, Georgie. See y'all later.